warm welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking time to meet with us today. My name is Claudina Vrochna, and I'm a Drone and Data Insights Manager at Robotics, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. Also, big thanks to my colleagues, Ken and Elsa, who are supporting today's webinar to make sure that it runs smoothly. I have been truly looking forward to this webinar. I believe this topic that will be presented today is both important and very cool. So we are lucky to be joined by two great speakers, Ramon Roche from Drone Foundation and Ginger Zheng from Hackster. I will run through their bios in just a few minutes. And Ramon and Ginger will talk about how you can leverage the open robotics movement as a go-to market option. So before I leave the floor to Ramon and Ginger, I would like to take just a few short minutes to present Robotics and the Flying Labs network. Who are we? So Robotics is a social impact organization that brings together local experts, communities, and activists to offer practical alternatives to systems dominated by foreign-led and top-down interventions. Our work is not just about the robots. It's about who gets to use them and for what purpose. So it's about shifting the power and redefining what it means to be an expert. Local experts who lived the experience, who are born in their local countries, typically know how best to create positive social impact effectively and sustainably within those countries. So we, as Robotics, we are co-creating and facilitating an inclusive and sustainable network of local drone, data, and robotic leaders in Africa, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. The network is called the Flying Labs Network. And by doing so, we build an effective and practical model that others can adopt to accelerate the locally led efforts in response to pressing challenges. Robotics' key role is to support the Flying Labs network so that the individual Flying Labs and the network as a whole can grow and thrive sustainably. As the slide shows, we do this through strengthening the technical and sustainability capacity, the opportunity and value transfer, the knowledge exchange, technology transfer, shared governance, and network model improvement and documentation. Now, I would like to just quickly run through also some information on the Flying Labs network. So Flying Labs is a global network of independent knowledge hubs, convening local experts in professional drone, data, robotics, and AI services. Flying Labs strengthen the local expertise in the use of drones, robotics, data, and AI, as I just mentioned, for positive social change. And collaborating with the community partners in the humanitarian, health, environment, and development sectors, each Flying Lab strengthens the local level capacity and tech expertise. They implement the sustainable solutions within their communities. They contribute to local ecosystems and share learnings across the entire network of Flying Labs to catalyze positive impact. There is a video here which I'm not going to play, but I'm going to stick the link in the chat so you can watch it later. Now, how the Flying Labs are set up is the Flying Labs are self-financed as they are hosted by existing local organizations that already offer professional services and education. So Flying Labs, in that sense, remain financially independent. They offer their own training and professional services to the local actors, such as local governments, businesses, NGOs, academia, etc., as well as international organizations. So that's all for the introduction of Robotics and the Flying Labs network. And now let me briefly present our wonderful speakers, Ramon and Ginger. Ramon is the general manager of the Drone Code Foundation, a nonprofit organization under the Linux Foundation, created to host open source software and hardware projects for drones. He leads a thriving community of more than 10,000 developers and commercial adopters behind projects such as the PX4 Autopilot, and I have no idea how to pronounce the Math SDK. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how you pronounce that. Ramon has been an active contributor to open source for more than a decade, working as an individual contributor and as a community leader. He's been actively advocating for open standards and open source in the drone industry. He's the host of the PX4 Developer Summit, a yearly event that brings hundreds of drone developers and robotics together. Sorry, roboticists, that's another difficult word. In 2021, Ramon was awarded the Industry Impactor Award by Airwords for more than 9 years of service to the drone industry. Some of his past projects included the Drone Kit, which was used to develop smart modes in drones and led to the massive success of the 3DR Solo by 3D Robotics. Ramon is also an avid gamer and reader of science fiction. He's been working remotely for the past decade, based in Mexico, and he lives with his family. And then just briefly, I promise it's the last few sentences about Ginger before I hand over to both of you. Ginger is the contest manager at Hackster, the leading global community for embedded electronics hardware engineers. And as a tech entrepreneur and world traveler, she was the founder of a robotics startup called DroneSmith, building hardware and software for aerial drones development, and led business, product, community, and marketing efforts as CEO. In 2017, she moved to China and worked on cultivating and managing relationships between the PX4 open source software project and the hardware manufacturers, and became an evangelist of the greater China ecosystem for open source drone initiatives and standards. Currently, Ginger facilitates virtual innovation challenges for the global community of hardware engineers at Hackster. And as a STEAM advocate, she's a visiting instructor and mentor at various institutions around the globe for entrepreneurship, open source, cross-cultural collaborations, and open innovations. She works with nonprofits organizations to promote gender equality, youth empowerment, and is on the board of directors of Open Source Hardware Association. We will have just a few minutes at the end of today's webinar to answer any of your questions. So everyone, please feel free to share any of your questions in the chat during the presentation or just after. And with that, I think I need a sip of water. I've talked enough, so I'm going to hand over to Ginger and Ramon for the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the great intro. How are you, everyone? Thank you for the space and for being here with us. I'm excited to be able to reach the We Robotics community and to talk about open source robotics. Hi, Ginger.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to support you.
Do you want me to start sharing my screen now? Let's see how this works. All right, I just need confirmation that everyone can see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, Ginger, with your permission, I'm gonna get started, and everyone feel free to drop your questions on the chat. Have a lot of slides, I promise I'm gonna go quickly. But if I go too quickly, make sure you write those down, and at the end we can have a little time for Q&A if we still have time remaining on in the webinar. All right, so let's just get started. What are we talking about today? So today we're going to talk about how to leverage the open source robotics movement And for those of you that are not aware of what open source is, this is the talk for you. So first of all, like Colleen already mentioned, she already read my bio. So this is just a quick intro about me. I work for the Linux Foundation. I'm the general manager for Drunko Foundation. And I work in open source. And why does open source matter? All right, well, open source as a movement is everywhere. It has penetrated every single aspect of technology out there. And not only technology, you can even find it in places like farms now. Open source is basically code that was meant to be shared so that everyone could access it and use it. This is not something new. This has been around for a lot of years now. And there's been a lot of questions about what the validity of any open source tool is and how you bring an open source project into an actual market. And that is a very fair question, because if Joe in, I don't know, Miami has a tool and he makes it open source, how does company IBM or Microsoft know that they can trust this tool from this developer in Miami to actually build a successful project on top of it? Well, turns out that there's been a lot of evidence that any open source project out there can become successful by one single metric. And that single metric is the key to success in any open source project, which is the community. Only the top successful projects out there actually built around a community. Why do you think that is? Well, a community actually helps a project shape together. So you democratize the process of creating that technology, and you all pitch in to actually help develop that. And that sounds really cool in practice, but it's a really actually hard problem to solve. When everyone has an opinion on how to build things, that's when you actually start becoming a community, and you have to start deconflicting those problems. Well, turns out there's also a solution for that. All right, so that's why the Linux Foundation was created. That's why Drunko Foundation, it was founded a bit later. So the answer on how to create a successful project is just to build an ecosystem around it, have a community. And turns out this actually applies to robotics as well, because there's a little robotics landscape out there for open robotics. So there's two big camps that I can talk to you today about. One big camp is open robotics. Open robotics has tools like ROS and Gazebo. And then the other one is Drunko Foundation, and we have projects like PX4, Autopilot, Pixoc, Map SDK, Q Ground Control, and Map SDK. What is the difference between one or the other? Open robotics is a general purpose robotics framework. So you would see people using open robotics for, let's say, robotics arms in a factory, placing one thing here, moving it to another location for conveyor belts. But you might also see it for a Roomba, a flying robot as well. But the other location and the other camp, the one that I'm most interested in, which is the one that I work in, is Drunko Foundation. And that's specifically for drones and IO robotics. So there's a community around us. There's an ecosystem around the projects that we work with. And I'm going to be talking to you today about all those projects, well, two of them specifically, and why that matters and why you should be paying attention to this. So first of all, what is Drunko Foundation and why we founded this? So like I said, we wanted to build an ecosystem around a few open source projects. We were founded in 2014, and we're basically following the same pattern that Linux Foundation already established. So for those of you that are unaware, the biggest open source project out there is the Linux kernel. The Linux kernel runs everywhere on the cloud. So if you have a phone, turns out that it connects to the cloud and you're already using Linux. Linux reached massive adoption over the last decades, and the Linux Foundation found a way to establish that by having a successful nonprofit model that we just adopted in Drunko Foundation. So we have members that support us to become to continue establishing developer relationships, to continue establishing an ecosystem with those companies. A little bit more about Drunko Foundation. were basically established to make sure that open technologies have a place within the drone industry. And we've been very successful with that. We have an ecosystem, like I said, it's all about the ecosystem. So your ecosystem revolves around the PX4 Autopilot. In this example, following the analogy of the Linux Foundation, we will be the kernel, so the actual thing that runs on top of drones, the brain of the drones. But we also have a few other collection of projects that actually support us in actually becoming successful, which is the Q ground control, which is a ground station. This is the project that you use to run a mission, to configure your vehicle, to do any type of actual user experience UI that you need to touch to actually control a drone. That's what ground control is. Then we also have hardware, open hardware and open standards on the PXOC project. For those of you that are not aware, this is a flight controller. I have it in my hand. It's PXOC, and that's what runs the drones. And then we also have MAP SDK and MapLink. MapLink is a communication protocol. That's an interface that we built in a standard that is being widely adopted outside PX4 and outside drone code as well by the industry, because it defines a set of messages and sub protocols for communication with vehicles. That's really important. And I'm going to talk about open standards and why that matters in a few next slides. And then, like I said, it's all around drone code. And we also support our sister community, ROS, and I want to talk about that later when we are talking in depth about ROS and PX4. But enough about code for that open source. Let's actually see the drones, and let's get down to the actual examples and why this matters. So the three main avenues in the data industry are consumer, commercial, and industrial sectors. Each has its own independent set of requirements and needs, and it's really hard to actually build a firmware that overlaps with all of them and actually enables each one of them. But we also support other platforms like rover, underwater vehicles, and boats. So if you are using PX4, you have access to all these platforms. We have a few members that are supporting us, that are adopting. There's a few already vehicles out there that are using PX4 for successful commercial adoption. And here's some pictures so that you know what I'm talking about. This is a platform for mapping inspection. This is one for package delivery used by Walmart. This is the same that Walmart is using. This is for mapping and inspection. This is a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing platform. This is for mapping and inspection as well. This is for medical deliveries. It's another VTOL. This is for inspection and secure reconnaissance, rescue. This is a really interesting platform, professional cinematography, and more vertical takeoff and landing. We have a pure fixed wing. We have a lot of different things. And now we also have NXP hover games. This is a development platform, and I'm sure Ginger and I are going to talk about this a bit more later. This is a really nice platform. So those are the drones that you can actually build, and the companies that are building them right now. And I'm going to talk to you now about how they're actually using PX4 and why they're using PX4 to actually enable this. Going back to the PX4 ecosystem, the PX4 Autopilot sits at the center, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of what it actually is. And if this is too in-depth or too technical, please let me know. I can try to make an even better overview. If you give me some feedback, just drop it in the chat. So PX4 Autopilot, think of it as a collection of modules that are running on top of an operating system. And this collection of modules allows you to configure a vehicle in any type of configuration, like a multi-copter, like I just showed you, a fixed wing, a vertical takeoff and landing, a sub, or a boat. It has a lot of different interfaces for developers. And the reason why we're successful is because we launched together with the PXOC project, which is this little thing in the circle. This is the hardware that is actually running the drone. So in collection, the hardware and the software are actually what operates the whole thing. And if you break everything apart, those are the core components. And what is actually running on top of that. So the high level overview is that if you have drone configuration, you have a ground station, and the ground station is running everything that's on the green rectangle, and then everything on the drone is everything that's running on the red rectangle. So you got the flight controller, which is taking telemetry data. It might have an RC, you're running your motors, all the sensors that you need for positioning, and you might have a camera. Maybe you want to take a few pictures, or you're running a survey mission. So the collection of sensor data and motor control and the libraries that run that drone on top of PX4 and the hardware, the Pixhawk actually has the IO, the parts necessary for you to build the drone and customize it. And a bit more of the flight stack architecture, if that's something that you're interested in. The main advantages of using PX4 for a developer would be the fact that all those collections, or those modules that I talked to you about, actually are interconnected. And if you want to make a modification of the source code, or maybe you want to have a new module, there's already well-established interfaces for you to do that. We have a middleware that is called UWarp. And through that, you can consume any type of data, let's say position data. You want to subscribe to the GPS data. Well, turns out there's a module in there that is doing that collection of sensor data from the GPS and sanitizing the data and giving it to you in a format that is well established and that you can expect always to remain the same. And then in your module, you can just subscribe, read the data, and take any action you might choose. Let's say you want to take your drone from A to B. You want to listen to that data and say, hey, am I already in B or close to point B? Yes, no, then take your next action. So that's the type of control you can get through PX4 in different modules. Very importantly, one thing that I glossed over is the fact that we have an open source license. All this software is BSD3 license, which means that you can take this software, so you can modify it, and you don't need to disclose any modifications that you make. So that means that you can take this, modify it, customize it, and it's all yours. We don't ask you anything. The only thing that you need to do to comply with the license is to disclose that you are using PX4. You don't need to show your code. You don't need to do any of that. But if you do, you will become part of the PX4 ecosystem and the community, which is the bigger part of the bigger benefit of becoming part and collaborating with the PX4 community. The rest of the modules are listed here are different type of feature and functionalities that I'm not really want to get into right now. We got the state machine autonomous flight. We have different position control mode. You have an altitude rate control. Everything that you expect out of a drone right now, it's actually already built in, and even more. We have huge ROS support, and ROS is the open source robotics library that I was talking to you at the beginning. Why would this matter? Why do we want to integrate with them? Well, the fact that ROS as a whole is a bigger community than PX4. Why are they a big community? Because their software is not just used in aerial robotics. It's also used in all other types of robotics, from humanoid robotics to arms and factory and vacuum cleaners. So that means that there's a bigger community of developers, and there's a bigger community of libraries that are already might solve a problem that you're trying to solve. So that means that if you get access to libraries and packages from ROS, and you're able to put them on top of PX4, you're only extending your capability. So we built ROS interface within PX4, and it is allowing all of our developers to actually take access of the ROS support and ROS ecosystem, which is even bigger than ours. But the actual benefit of using PX4 to us is that we are a 90% solution. We're not expecting you to flash PX4 in your firmware and your Pixhawk and be able to have a successful product just because you flashed it. We're not that type of project. We're a project that is focused on giving you the tools that you need to target your customers' needs. So if you already have a problem that you're trying to solve, we want to help you solve that problem rather to solve it ourselves. We're not in the business of solving the problems for you. We're here to actually give you the tools that you need to solve it yourself. And since we started the project, we started adding different features as time goes by. And who's actually contributing? Why would they contribute if you have an open BSD3 license? Well, it turns out that the companies that are successful in our ecosystem are the ones that share the most back. Why? Because they see the value of shared knowledge within PX4. The fact that each of the layers that are on my slides are there is because a company already helped us develop those features, put them in there and put them into practice. And this will only be better as time progresses. And the tools that you see here are not even the whole thing. It's just trying to tell you the story. But all of the tools and features that we already have are just here for you to take advantage of them so that you can add the differentiators on top. Let's say different capacity that you want to carry on that platform for package delivery. Maybe you want to customize it and have different motors because you're expecting a different type of mission. Maybe you need to certify your vehicle. Well, you have the tools already to be able to accomplish that. Just a bit more about the project and the community. We had more than 1,000 active contributors and more than 7,000 in total. We publish yearly reports of contributions. If you go to the Drone Code blog, you will see all the 2022 contribution metrics on our blog. And the biggest benefit, apart from the community and all the tools and the features, is the fact that PX4 comes together with the PixOC project. The PixOC project is the open hardware, the open standards. And why does that matter? Well, if you have firmware, you need somewhere to run the firmware. You need the where to run the actual code. And when PX4 got created at ETH Zurich, they quickly realized that they not only needed the software, they also needed the hardware. So that's how the PixOC got created. And then the PixOC was based out of the need of having cost-effective components to actually build a drone. And that goal has morphed into actually providing specifically flight controllers for the drone industry that got created thanks to all the open source movement. So again, this is just a bare bones drone. That's the PixOC. And this is the collection of PixOCs that we had since 2020. We started with really rough hardware, and then it started to actually get better over time. But honestly, the first PixOC 1, that got introduced like 10 or more years ago, it's still the king right now because it's so solid, so reliable, that is really hard to get. There's not, thanks to the pandemic and the supply chain issues, actually chips for the PixOC 1 aren't available right now. So the demand for PixOC 1s has gone through the roofs. There's a lot of demand for the older hardware because it's really reliable. So the new hardware has a life expectancy of more than 10 years. And that is really valuable for an open hardware project. So the fact that there's hardware that was published 10 years ago, is really used right now, it speaks for the quality of the hardware that was created together with the community. This is the standard for the latest that we launched last year, which is called FMUV6X, earlier this year. And it's basically a different collection of sensors. We got everything in there to be able to position the drone and to fly it. And all that hardware is linked back to PX4 Autopilot. So we defined the standards together as a community. We have a work group with different members of our community that actually pitch in for the design. They help us define the problems that we're trying to solve. This standard, for example, has redundancy everywhere. It's really reliable. This is made for performance applications, for delivery, for the most robust, demanding needs. But we also have different considerations. So we have a modular design. This means that the module on top, I don't know if you can see my picture here, you can take this module off, and let's say you have another round of flight controllers. Now they're interconnectable. So if you are investing into a PixOC ecosystem as an end user, now if you spend your money on a flight controller, but later decide to upgrade to a later generation, you can keep your base port and only operate the FMU module. Or let's say there's a vendor that has a baseboard that has different functionality than the basic PixOC. Let's say it has ADS-B module maybe. Now that also becomes a target that you can adopt, because you can use the same hardware, the same software in that hardware. And we did that thanks to the different open standards. We have an open standard for the baseboards. We have an open standard for the connectors on the hardware. We have an open standard for the collection of sensors. We have open standards for gimbals, and all different things that you might care within when you have your own fleet of drones. This is just a few examples of the latest generation of PixSocs that are out there. And I didn't picture here the rest of the open standards. We have a standard for batteries. We have a standard for radio interfaces. And like I said, for the autopilot bus that actually connects the FMG modules within the flight controllers. And we're actively looking for new problems to solve with open standards and open hardware. And our members are still active and engaged. And DroneCode is helping them to implement the open standards and the open hardware and helping them get to market faster by adopting all of this. So you don't need to rethink and rebuild or build your hardware from scratch. You can use an open standards. You can purchase from a company that is already using open standards, or you can build your own. So consider that next time you're planning on building any project. And all right, so quickly, I'm reaching the end of my slides. How to find our community. So we have a very active community. You can find us on our yearly event. We have an event happening later this year in October 21st and 22nd in New Orleans. We're expecting more than 200 developers. There's a link to the event website. I think I put a link to my slides at the beginning of the webinar. So if you have time to scroll back all the way up and click on that. If it's not there, I'll post a link later. Feel free to post any questions about the rest of the topics. I'm gonna almost go towards the end of my slides. We celebrated the PX4 Developer Summit last year, also with 200 developers. We had a drone light show in the middle of Austin, Texas. It was great 2 days of developer content. Ginger was there as well. And you can also find us at ROSCON. We were at ROSCON last year. We're going to be together with ROSCON this year. We have a podcast on our YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, search for PX4 Autopilot. There's a podcast in there where I interview different members of our community. But there's also tutorials and getting started guides, more importantly, that you can leverage to be able to use ground control or PX4 or PixSoc. We have websites. We have forums. We have Discord. We have GitHub and documentation. Feel free to click on any of those. And just to end and conclude all of this, I have a message for you. Why does this matter? So here's the opportunity for you. The industry, even though that it's been around for the last 15 years, it's just getting started. And it's all powered by open technologies. So here's a number you might want to remember. 58.4 billion. What is that? Well, that is the estimated market value of the drone industry in 2026. That means that if you get started now with a drone-related business and you start adopting open technologies, you still have time to reach 2016 and to capture a portion of that market for you and to help customers actually solve problems with open robotics technologies. Think about that. Drone delivery specifically. This is a survey that was done by one of my member companies. 64 of Americans see drone delivery as becoming an option for home delivery. 58 will favor drone delivery versus any other form of delivery. 41% would pay extra for drone delivery, and 44% would purchase a permanent landing pad for their backyard so they can have drone delivered packages. Think about that and let me know if you have any questions and how I can help you to reach your goals. And let's get involved. Let's chat. And that's it for me. All right. This is it. Ginger, do you need my slides? Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, maybe you can stop sharing, Ramon. And Ramon really poured his heart out, like on all these slides. I don't I didn't like prepare like such a great slide today, but I'd love to just share a couple of like my thoughts, you know, and then I know I probably, you know, will go through about like 10 minutes, and then we can save some time for a more like elaborate like a Q&A. Ramon already introduced, you know, all the meat of, you know, the technical side of things. I really just want to add on from kind of like my point of view, a couple of like my journey. Actually, I'm gonna steal maybe some of my slides from before, since I didn't prepare such one. Like this was actually a drone that that really started my drone journey, which, you know, we're talking about go to market as a viable option, right? I just graduated from college, and actually at the time, you know, all the drones, you know, on the market were like defense grade, you know, 50,000 Indigo, those kind of just really highly inaccessible technology. So at the time, we actually, you know, as just college grad, you know, I created this robotics startup, and we wanted to make just drones that's more accessible for developers. So this is a drone that was like 3D printed the frame, and then actually at the time, that's what we used was a PixHawk base. At that time, PixHawk wasn't a standard yet. So, but even you just be able to buy a $300 like flight controller, and then you are able to build a drone, and all of a sudden, like you have a you know, this drone I think was the first drone kit that we made from our company, that is about $300. So anybody can get started with robotics, you know, with you know, with just a really easy kit, and you know, like I still very much believing that kind of mission, and I think that's a part of the reason why PixHawk had such an impact and contribution to the drone industry, is to enable that. So actually, what happened, you know, throughout like my own personal journey was that we you know, as a startup, you know, we built these you know, really open and accessible drone kits, and then also from the software side, we were trying to create APIs that other developers can also build on top of it really easily. And then so this was our own version of that. This doesn't exist anymore. It was a really short-lived product, but just to give you the go-to-market type of throwback, this was actually the flight controller like my company made, you know, back 10 years ago. This was 10 years ago. So, and the reason why some college just recent grad kids can even do this kind of stuff is because PX4. So because PX4, you know, we're like, oh, you know, did you guys know that there's this autopilot and there's PX4, and then you can just use this software code and then really really build your own flight controller. Again, right, you know, this was like under $300. We were using free open software. We modified it, you know, to fit our own hardware, modify the firmware, and then, you know, like just really start like selling this. Actually, let me see. How do I advance my slides? Oh, there we go. So at the time we actually, you know, was some pretty hot startup that we almost got into America's Greatest Makers, you know, in the show. We did like a live over the air update, you know, with Docker container back in 2016, and, you know, went around the world, and, you know, like with Intel to demonstrate like what we did. And at the time, you know, we had this kind of illustration of how drones, you know, like, you know, of today is, you know, you have to remote control it, but we're trying to create like IoT drones. And that's why all the software side of things make really is very significant. Another thing about open source communities that I want to say is like it really translate to global wide adoption, because after my US startup, when I went back to China, what I, you know, because of being in the PX4 community and kind of part of being in the drone code community, so that I was able to, you know, go to hackathons, and this was actually a hackathon about using cargo drones in Africa, and then, you know, also at the time, because there's this concept is still very much in concept mode, but in China, they produce all these motorcycles, that's used in Southeast Asia and Africa. And so we're talking about, like in terms of manufacturing, who's going to make the future cargo drones? And, can the Chinese manufacturers create those drones? I get to tour like all those like motorcycle companies in China. And then we did actually, I was part of the Drone Code's really early like China Roadshow, back in 2017, where we met with the community from China. And that was lots of just great, like Ramon talked about the community, and I really want to resonate with that. The community is really global, and by being part of this, you are not just working alone. You are actually sharing a technology creation and adoption, with just a really large global community. This was Lorenz, this one of his like early deck back in 2017. As you can see, it's that portfolio of drones has like grown, like over the years. This is another, this is like some of my old slides. This is actually at a battery factory in China. As Ramon was like mentioning, smart batteries also part of like the hardware standard. So how can everyone have like smart batteries like DJI is still a very much a community effort from all the innovators from around the world. So yeah, at the time I hosted a lot of like meetups in local community. In terms of just talk, just really hang out and nerd out. I still have a show called Hang Out and Nerd Out. But yeah, so these kind of things, I've been working the drone for quite a while now. I just want to show this really quickly because I did see somebody from Tanzania. This is one of like, I think really prime like kind of go to market with open source and low cost hardware like a prime case, right? In terms of somebody can build a flying drone out of like bamboo using like local materials, using these like low cost hardware, because in Africa and in Switzerland, like your buying power is just totally different. But with the power of like open source, open hardware, open software, and the global community that's online, as well as like in person, like this open ecosystem just creates a like really is like what propels like the industry like moving forward. And of course like from prototype to product to real mass manufacturing, and then the eventual it's a really long journey, but the open source aspect is a super significant aspect to just enable these technologies from around the world. So that's something I want to share with everyone. And in terms of what I do right now, I am with Hackster.io, and Ramon mentioned like the part of in the ecosystem, a really kind of small but also very significant portion is the development platform. So NXP hosts this hover games. They produce this drone kit called Hover Games, and then every year they host a themed contest to invite the community to basically like do projects around using drones to solve real world problems. So the first year was a firefighting thing. The second year was during pandemic, how drones can help pandemic relief. And then this year it actually just finished all the submission. It was around food, around like the food crisis from around the world. So again, I really love this kind of global community initiative within the PX4 ecosystem, because you can get like really nerdy, but this is this is the really fun aspect, and it's also global, it's online, so anyone from around the world can participate. In terms of, and the submission right now is hidden because we're judging, and Ramon's one of our judge. So and then yeah, people get to usually also experience with newly released hardware that's based on the PIXHawk standard. They build their projects, we can actually come back. So if you go to hackster.io, go to the contest page, and then you'll be able to see the whole contest. You can participate. We usually, for all the Hackster contests, we usually like give out. We do like hardware giveaway as well. So for people who have, like more constraint on financial, can use the Hackster contest and NXT Hover Games as a way to get hardware, and we actually have our own warehouse, so we ship around the whole world. Sometimes, I hear, users, get back to me and it's like, oh, this is the first piece of hardware in my continent. And that just, like really melts my heart in terms of, how the, helping the distribution of hardware, to go around the world so people can get access to those technology is really, to me, like very deep down in my heart. So yeah, like, please check this out. This is open and accessible to everyone. And we also actually, part of what I really love about the Hover Games, people from, I don't know if I'll be able to actually share my screen on Discord. We have such a vibrant, just maybe I am able to, yeah, like right here. So this is actually one of the Discord channel in the for this Hover Games contest, that you can just see what open source collaboration like can be just really fun and engaging, and people from around the world all working on this, like together during this contest, and they will share their drone photos. But during this whole time of, everybody distributed, innovation, happening around the world, but there's also this kind of online platform for them to communicate, and to sometimes even through those communication can help them solve certain technical issues, really fast together. I think that kind of synergy is just really unbelievable. Really, it's part of it's that kind of inclusivity and just caring and sharing aspect of communities, also a part of the PX4 community in general, just very amazing. So yeah, like the Hover Games contest is hosted, is organized yearly. The PX4 Developer Summit is hosted yearly. Please, join and come to those events. I think a huge part of like the open source is the participation aspect of it. Participate, and then when you can contribute, you can contribute. All of those are kind of organic, as you joining the movement, and it's very so no matter where you are in the world, you have the access to almost like same tools, the same people, and make this like really equal and to all the people from around the world. So that's kind of just my quick sharing of and my perspective of how to go to market with the open robotics movement. And I'm happy to here now joined, like Ramon and the rest of you to answer questions.
Thank you, Ginger. Thank you both, Ramon, as well. Your presentations made me smile because it reminded me of my very first drone that I built with a Pixhawk and PX4. That was about 8 or 9 years ago. So definitely that slide with different versions of Pixhawk bring back those memories. And then Ginger, what you said about building the global community, it really resonates. That's also what we try to do every day here at We Robotics and the Flying Labs. I already saw a few questions that have been answered. So they came from Césaire from Cameroon Flying Labs. Ramon, I don't know if you want to just quickly run through them so that the rest of the audience hears your answers.
Yeah, sure thing. So I think the first question was from Césaire, and then he asked, does the latest Pixhawk support computationally intensive tasks like computer vision, or do we still need a companion computer? And then his second question is, what are the best onboard computers that are actually associated with the flight controller in the industry and production? And my response to him was, yeah, we think that non-flight critical tasks, such as the computer vision, should be handled by an additional companion computer. So yes, using a companion computer in coordination with the flight controller is the best option. Now, having said that, you can have a flight controller like this that only has a flight controller in here, or you can have one like this. I don't know if you can see it on my screen. This has a flight controller unit here, here, and it has a Raspberry Pi in here. So it already has everything in here that you need to do that. And he asked for examples of other companion computers that you can utilize. I see the industry adopting NXP IMX boards a lot, MapQ Plus, and anything that is IMAX based. I also see a lot of NVIDIA cards, and obviously our Raspberry Pis are still massive adoption because of the use of the platform and how easy and accessible they are to actually acquire. There was another question, and this was a direct message to me, but I'm gonna share it with you because an important question is, can you integrate PX4 with other types of engines that are not electric? The answer is yes, you can use PX4 gas engines as well, as we use those. We've seen examples of PX4 being used in other types of platforms that are non-electric. And let's see if there's any other questions here. I think there's another one, but I don't know that I understand what he's, how authentic is this product? Have you tried for a successful project the concept of more BL or more or less like OSM? I'm not familiar with those two concepts, I'm sorry.
Maybe Tina, Tina, if you can hear us, I think you're still here. If you don't mind clarifying your question, we would really appreciate it.
And then if anyone else have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat room.
Absolutely. And if you prefer to just unmute yourself and talk, then please feel free to raise your hand and we will enable the option.
Well, while you think on those questions, I want to stress the importance of the Horror Games project. It just ended. They're not accepting applications anymore, right, Ginger?
Yeah, yeah, no, not for this one.
Mm-hmm. And then this month we're selecting the winners, but then next year they're going to open again, and we think that you should take a deep dive right now into all the projects in Hackster.io for the Horror Games project and take inspiration on what sort of projects you can take and do. There's every type of projects from beginner to the very advanced, and we qualify everyone equally based on the ideas and how innovative they are. And if you want to participate next year, we fully encourage you to do that. It's a great platform. You get access to really advanced hardware for a discounted price, and you end up helping the rest of your community.
Yeah, and we also on Hackster, we have a drone topics channel. So you're more than welcome to, I just posted the link here. You're more than welcome to visit that topic channel and post your own projects. Hackster do get, pretty big coverage, through around the globe. And so, by posting your maybe local project, on there, you can also get some eyes. And also just great to see other people's open source projects as well.
And it seems like the applications usually open in October, am I right? Or it depends. I see that the contest began in October 2022, so I'm wondering when we should look out for the opening in 2023.
Yeah, I think it's not always kind of on time.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would say definitely follow Hackster. If you follow Hackster on social media, we those communications will always come out, and you won't be you won't miss it.
All right, sounds good. Thanks. Are there any other questions? We possibly still have time for one.
I feel like I definitely want to also mention Ramon probably shared the Discord for Drone Code Foundation. Yeah, maybe we should post it in here again just to make sure we invite everyone to the Drone Code Foundation Discord. I would say you know, being kind of around a lot of global community, a lot of people feel lost, you know, how to participate in the open ecosystem in the beginning. Could be confusing, and but joining just the Discord and start seeing, you know, like what other people are talking about around drones, you know, it's a really good way to get started. And then of course, you know, I also most of the time advise students just, you know, go to the GitHub and start with PX4, the code itself, right? You know, look around because that's where all the DNA, where the core kernel is at. Sometimes the getting started could be daunting and confusing, but you know that the community is very welcoming, and just, you know, by participating, maybe even lurking in some of the community calls, but never, you know, be shy to ask questions. You know, it's always a great way to get started. And then you'll make friends, make network, and have many other points and tips from various different people, you know, along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the one thing that I would like all of you to take back home, I guess, is the fact that open source is about the people. It's about you as a community. It's, yes, there's hardware, yes, there's software, but most importantly is the ecosystem and is the community. So join the Discord. I put a link on the chat. You can do all sort of things in there, like Ginger was saying. You can get help getting started. Maybe you're more seasoned veteran. You can also get help in there. Or you can help others. You can get a job. You can post a job, and you can network with the community. We got 2 more questions already on the chat, so can I run through those quickly before we run out of time?
Absolutely, go for it.
All right, I'm going to take the last one. Can PX4 be used in defense military projects? There's nothing in our license or the software that says otherwise. That said, yes, I know that it's being used in security applications, but we do not actively help any company with any defense-oriented application. Like I said, the PSD3 license allows you to take the software and use it as you will. We do not actively, as a foundation, participate in any defense activities. The next one is, can I familiarize myself with PX4 to having the hardware through online courses? The answer is yes, absolutely. Go try the software, download it. You can run simulation on your computer. You don't need the hardware. You can run on simulation and test in simulation. And once you're ready to actually move to hardware, then you can start looking into what type of investment you're going for over there. Any recommendations? Yeah, definitely go to docs.px4.io. That's the main source of documentation for PX4, and there's a lot of guides in there on how to do it. Or go to the PX4 Autopilot YouTube channel. There's also tutorials and guides in there how to do that.
Awesome. And with that, we reached 1 hour of the webinar. So thank you once again. I can't thank you enough, Ginger and Ramon. It was a great pleasure hosting you here. And thank you everyone for joining and sticking around until the end. We will send the recording quite soon to everyone who signed up. And I hope to see you here again at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting us. Thanks for organizing
Thank you.
this.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.